All right, Fiberistas, welcome to the next live. It's Stacy Budge Camison with UrbanGypZ. So how are you guys doing today? Today I'm going to talk about a little bit more about the clay work I've been doing and how I intend to use that in my fiber art. I know I've touched on this a bunch in other videos, but you know, this feels like a really good direction for me, so I wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit more. Anyway, but before we begin, I just wanted to say there is a little bit of lag time between what I say and what you guys actually see. So if you have any questions, please post them in the comments in the chat, but just know that it might take me a few extra seconds to see them. I'm not sure exactly what the time lag is. I think it's like 6 seconds. Maybe more. I don't know. I know there's definitely a lag. So anyway, so yeah, clay and the fiber art. So when we moved here to Cary, I found that the town of Cary had this awesome resource for me to do ceramics, and that's something I learned to do in college. I took a class that was part of my BFA. And I took a couple of other classes in Birmingham, but I never really had the resources to like really get into a studio with the equipment and just go to town. Now the equipment, I mean, I know a lot of people go ahead and sink the money into the equipment, but that stuff is pretty freaking expensive. And some kilns require you, especially kilns like for making ceramics, dishes and stuff, require you to upgrade your electrical panel. And in a lot of the houses I've rented in the past, that wasn't feasible. And by the time I moved to Asheville and owned my own house, it wasn't something I was interested in. Anyway, so yeah, the resource here in Cary is the Cary Art Center. You may have seen me post about that on Instagram. But yeah, the Cary Art Center has some great classes, and they also have an open studio, and it's really inexpensive because it's part of the Parks and Recreation part of the town of Cary. So anyway, I've been going there pretty much since we moved here, and it's been awesome. And I spent about a year throwing mugs, just mugs. And that's primarily because I love a really good hand-thrown coffee mug. And I'm still in the quest to make the perfect hand-thrown coffee mug, but I've kind of taken a break from the mugs, really. So then I started using it to kind of make stuff for art. And I know that you guys have seen pictures of the hangers that I made for the weaving. Here's an example of one. And I probably should have pulled the one off the wall that shows, I made these, and then I hang my weavings here, and that's instead of hanging them off of a stick. So, and I think it's just a little more interesting. And I started to play with more sculptural forms as far as that stuff goes. So the next thing that I've been working on as far as the clay goes is I've also been trying out, check this out. See this piece? There we go. And you can see something fell on it in the kiln. That's the one of the downsides of a community kiln, that sometimes some things will explode off and land on your piece. And of course, since this was so thin, I also ran the risk of it cracking. But anyway, what this is this is something I got off of Pinterest that was an idea that people use for art projects in elementary schools, where you string across, it's like a circular weaving type thing, and then you can weave through here. And of course I had the little hanger that's right here, but since this has this piece, if I can't get this ground off with a Dremel, then this will be just a practice piece. But yeah, anyway, so this, I'm gonna mess with that and play with some more tile type stuff, or I could even do some that are this way, right? So yeah, I've been playing with the hangers, but I've also been playing with textures. And I know I've mentioned these before. I made these little little gigas that I'm going to, and I don't know that I'll necessarily weave them into the piece. Technically, I can't wrap my brain around that, how that would work, other than putting it on the warp, and I think putting on the warp would be cumbersome. So I might end up just sewing these on afterwards, or finding a way to, I don't know, I'll have to play with it. Anyway, but I've got a bunch of these to work with. And I've been playing with other shapes. I mean, just kind of sitting down with the clay and fiddling around with little shapes, and then trying to make multiples of them, because when I make multiples of them then and cluster them together on the piece, then they become a texture. And that's one thing that's excuse me, my nose itches. Oh, I was spinning today and there's fiber everywhere. So yeah, so the texture, I mean, that's the thing about art weaving, right? Is that it has a lot to do with textures, be it just a little bit of subtle texture or texture on steroids. But you're using, a lot of times people are using their hand spun, their textural hand spun, and highlighting that in weaving. So this just adds another dimension of texture. I'm also using the clay to try and come up with some focal pieces that I can put onto the weaving as well. So then the textures all around would become relatively subtle, and then you have a focal piece in somewhere on the piece. I had played with it a little bit with patches and also with the felted dreads. Again, the fiber. But I want to play with it a little bit with the clay, because I think the contrast between the ceramic and the hardness of the ceramic and to the softness of the fiber, or the shininess of the glaze to the matte finish of a fiber, I think that contrast would be really interesting. So I'm playing, that's some of the stuff that I'm playing with. But you know, playing with these clay textures also kind of brings to mind that it doesn't necessarily have to be ceramic clay. Now, not everybody has access to a inexpensive community studio, and that's fine. And I've gone through, I guess in the last couple of videos, some of the alternative ideas, you know, where I said, oh, maybe you could use some feathers, or maybe you could use some seashells, or chicken bones. You know, I guess you could go to the hardware store and find some other stuff to put in there, or you can use alternatives to make your own textures that don't necessarily use, you know, fired ceramics. I mean, you can use air dry clay, you could use polymer clay. So if you're going, what the difference between textures and embellishments, to me, and a focal point. I mean, textures and a focal point. Textures means that I'm making a lot of something, and by putting it together, it's going to create, you know, the little forms then somehow create like a texture, right? But if I'm doing a focal point, then chances are it would be just one piece. You know, maybe it's one piece sewn onto my weaving this way, right? Then it becomes a focal point. I mean, you know, for that matter, it could be, you know, a couple of pieces sewn on, right? You know, and maybe I would play with, you know, the areas where it was sewn on and the different colors of thread. So yeah, and by adding these on and creating, you know, textures or focal points, you know, you can mess with the composition along your piece. And for the most part, I guess that would just be wall weavings. I mean, I suppose you could do it for a scarf. It would be, I personally would end up breaking stuff off of the scarf, but I guess it could be done. I don't know. Anyway, but that's just some food for thought and stuff that I've been working on. Now, truth be told, I have not been spending a whole lot of time in the studio, and mostly because it's summertime and the kids' camps are there, so it gets a little crowded. As well as the firing schedule with the kiln slows down because they prioritize the classes, which is fine. So, it gives me time to work a little in my art journal on, some ideas of what I want to do. And then that way, when I get into the studio, I can focus my time a little better. So, other than that, I've been spinning a lot. A whole lot. Like, let me show you a lot. A few months ago, I did those blending board, big Rolex. Yeah. Anyway, so here's some of that stuff that I spun up. Yeah, this one was the organized one where I pulled those fibers and kind of made a colorway in the bucket. But check this out. These were the more willy-nilly ones, and I guess this is more related to the organized, but I think I added some other colors in there. And then this was one of the really willy-nilly ones where I just kind of grabbed pieces out of my fiber stash and spun them up. And what I do a lot of times, because I spun these with the intentions of using them in weaving. Oh, thank you, Tina. I spun these with the intentions of using these in weaving, so I spun them a little thinner than I normally would. And I also just kind of went, just picked one up and didn't worry about if it was the same color ways or not. And that's only because I'm finding you use a significantly less yarn when you're weaving. Oh, here's another one. Yeah, this was a lot of the willy-nilly ones too. I think these are like maybe 4 of the Rolex that I made per spindle. It's a pretty big spindle. And I've also been doing a lot of 2-ply. Love my 2-ply. Hello, Marie Helene. Is that how you say your name? I'm so sorry. I'm sorry if I slay that. Anyway, hi everybody. So here's some of the 2-ply. I have some rovings that this I don't think was an overdyed roving. This was one I've had in the stash for a while. A couple of rovings, because it made this. And I think I'm going to batch it together with some similar colors and for a sweater, like a big bulky sweater, like a jacket type sweater. Part of the 2 sweaters that I'm supposed to finish by the end of the year. I'm almost done with one. I'll share that with you next week because I left it upstairs. And then I also did this. I don't know if you can see this. There we go. This is a little finer. This is from, now I've got a e-spinner, and that just produces a much finer and more even yarn. So when I pull this up and just soak it, I'm going to see how it fluffs out, how big it fluffs out. And if so, I might put it into the sweater. I don't know. This yarn's significantly fatter than this one. I don't know. Maybe not. It might go. So we'll see. I'll see what happens when it fluffs out. But I also have a bunch of single leftover. I think this is from this yarn. And I'm going to just spindle this up and put this on a bobbin and use this in the weaving. So that's what I've been working on. Spinning a lot of the stash. So, and just trying to, just because I've got a lot of wool, languishing wool, I've just been in the mood to spin. So I'm adding to a lot of that stash. And trying to make some yarns with weaving in mind. So that's what I've been working on. But anyway, so for what I wanted to do also was talk a little bit about my accountability. Because, okay, so I've got those 2 sweaters that I'm working on. I'm almost done with that one. And then I'm going to get started. You know, I'm kind of flipping back and forth between which sweater I'm going to do as my second one. And I think I need to just not overthink it and go for the low-hanging fruit so I can get those 2 sweaters done by the time it gets cold. And it gets cold late here, so I'm good. But the other accountability is that I told myself I was going to make 25 of these by the end of the year. And that's because I think 25 of these would help me make sure that I have 25 pieces for a body of work. And I really feel like rather than doing a piece here and doing a piece there, I really would like to have a cohesive body of work where the pieces are similar and feel that they belong together to put in a portfolio on my website. So that is the goal. Right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 more in the kiln. So we'll see if those come out. So that's 8. And then 2 of the figurines. So that's 10. 10, right? So I'm 2/5 of the way through. No. 10. Yeah, 2/5 of the way through my goal. So that's what I'm going to do. Now when I'm going to have those done by. I'd like to have them done by the end of the year, but again, I'm at the mercy of my schedule and the kiln schedule. But I don't think the kiln schedule's that tight. I mean, especially school starts like in a week, so it'll be fine by then. Hey, Lana, right? Sorry if I slay that name. I'm really bad with saying, getting the pronunciation of names that I'm reading, and I apologize. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on. That and, drum roll, I'm going to see if I can get set up to share some dyeing with you guys next week. I know that's something that I've promised as far as class-wise goes, and then that kind of fell down trying to get the outdoor set up. I promised before I could get that set up. But I do have a very simple setup that I can share with you guys, and I want to. So, I just have to figure out the camera part, which I think I can do. Probably just with my phone. So, we'll do that. Sounds like I like Lana. Oh, like Lana. Okay, Lana. There we go. Hi, Lana. Hi, Chris. Okay, so that's it. So yeah, dyeing next week. I'm just going to show maybe some yarn or fiber. Either way. I mean, I kind of dye the yarn and the fiber the same ways with this method that I'm going to show you. It'll be really easy. So, that's it. That's all I have for today. I'm going to go back upstairs and spin some more. And, oh, and that loom. I tried bending that beater and it's not working. It's still warped. I think what I need to do though is steam it. I googled to find out how to rebend wood, and they said steam. So I've got a steamer that I use to block stuff, and I'm gonna try and steam the heck out of that wooden beater, and then I've tied it down to the frame really tight and see if that fixes it, and hopefully that does. So anyway, so that's it for today, you guys. Anyway, if you have any questions, put them in the Facebook group or shoot me an email. If you're not a member of the Facebook group, I'm going to leave a link down below on the Facebook collective, the Fiber Art Collective, and that group is really cool. There's a lot of people that share what they're working on, and it's just everybody's very encouraging and inspirational, and if you have any questions, people are very, very helpful with answers. Anyway, so yeah, so become a part of the collective. All right, peeps, I am going to sign off. I will see you next week with some dyeing. All right, talk to you later. Bye now.